Hi, welcome to another episode of Tell Me How You're Mighty, Infidelity Survival Stories. I'm Tracy Shorn, otherwise known as Chump Lady, and I'm here with Sarah Gorel. And our guest today is one of the mightiest people I've had the pleasure of meeting from my blog, Darlene. She's a recently retired legal secretary, a mother of 4 amazing adults, and a grandmother to two, she says, perfect grandchildren. Welcome, Darlene.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we met up a couple years ago in DC, and you told me your chump story. Can you tell us a bit about how you came to the blog and your D-Day? Because you were a bit, your kids were a bit older at the time, right?
Yes, they were almost all out of college, undergrad. And
Mm-hmm.
I had one who was done, who had completed her PhD. And I had one, I believe, who was in grad school. And then I had two about to graduate from undergrad. So they were all
They were
old,
all out of the
beyond
house.
child support, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was timed perfectly. And I always look at that. And, at the time I was just like, why now? But it was actually the best time for me
Yeah.
that it could have happened because there was none of that tug of war about custody. And I didn't have to deal with any of that, which my kids all needed to get into therapy,
Yeah.
but which they're in therapy, but it did not like blow up into this big tug of war and constant bickering.
Yeah.
So I was just able to like kind of transition on.
But it's a hard time in life to go through a divorce, like a gray divorce. You worry
It
about
is,
your
it is.
retirement and how you're
And
gonna.
and that was my biggest concern because when I was growing up, and I'm glad my mother instilled this in me. She always told me, have your own money.
Yeah.
Always have your own money. Because you never know what's going to happen in your life. So I had always worked. Now I wasn't making like goo gobs of money, but I had money. But then I lost one job in
Mm.
the middle of the divorce, but ended up getting a better job within 6 weeks.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
even that worked out. And so it was a good time.
Yeah.
When I look back on it, it was the perfect time for it to have happened.
But I'm sure it didn't feel perfect.
It's in some ways though, you sort of think, I mean, I know some people, I know I did, my kids were younger and it was almost like because I had to keep going for them, I kept going. But if your kids are independent and they're away from home and you sort of haven't got that, you haven't got that to keep, isn't it more difficult if everything's gone? Or I know you had your job, but if everything's gone all of a sudden.
Well, you know what? I think initially I felt that way. Um, but my kids were actually very supportive.
Mm.
And I had two very, very good friends who were very supportive because initially I was considering suicide, like that
Oh
whole
no.
mindset that you go through.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because when I was starting, and when my kids talked to me like he's not worth it, da 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 da. But when I was feeling at my lowest was when I found your blog because I had
Oh.
been on that other crazy site that basically tells you stand for your marriage, and I'm thinking like this isn't my story, and like what, and it just wasn't like resonating with me, like because everybody on there sounded like they were so depressed all the time, and I
Yeah.
thought there's got to be something else. And somebody mentioned you, but they didn't have your name where I could click on it. You know how
Mhm.
sometimes you can click on, they
Yeah.
didn't have your name like that. And I thought, okay, I got to go find her. So I Googled you,
Yeah.
and it was just like, oh my God. I found my therapist and you around the same time.
Oh, well,
Isn't
I'm so
that
glad you
amazing
found.
though? Because I found Tracy by there's a site that we have in the UK called Mumsnet, and invariably people will go on there and they'll share their affair story, and then all the classic kind of behaviour comes through, and usually half down way down a thread, always someone will say, "Look, you need to go on to Jump Lady, and you need to see that this is how they behave, and this is unique to you, and that he's running you a merry dance." So it sounds kind of quite similar in a way, Darlene.
Oh yeah, like if I had not seen that, God knows how long I would have stayed in that uh blender, like of
Oh,
people like, yes, and blah, blah, blah. And like they're always checking, and then they always find out the person is cheating again. And it's just like, okay, there's got to be something different than this, because this sounds crazy to me.
so
Like it didn't make sense to me.
yeah, no, well, it doesn't. It's crazy making, right? So was your ex, he was happy to eat cake? Did you have to divorce
Oh,
him?
well, you know what? Initially, I'm assuming that's what he was doing. But when
Yeah.
he was ready to go, he was ready to
Yeah.
go. Like he was done. And so it was just like, okay. But some of that, but like he would dip in, to try to make sure like I was still on the string. And I thought,
No.
this is crazy. So the first thing I did that was recommended on your blog was just go no contact so I could clear my head.
Yeah.
And and I was in therapy, which my oldest daughter had recommended, and my therapist was really good. And that was the first real validation I
Hmm.
had, because when I was starting to relate what I was going through, and my therapist's head kept tilting to the side, and I thought, okay, it's not just me. This is crazy to her too.
Yeah.
And that was my first sense of, okay, I'm not crazy. Like there's something wrong here.
How did you find out? What was your D-Day? Like what, I
Oh,
mean,
it
maybe
was
you're
all, it
not.
was all, well, you know what, his behavior always changed.
Yeah.
And he was always on his phone more. He was always having his phone, like the typical stuff.
Mhm.
But I paid the cell phone bill. And so
Oh,
the first D-Day, when I didn't leave, that I was aware of, when I say first D-Day, I always stipulate that I was aware of,
yeah.
because I'm sure there were others. I to his section of the phone bill was missing.
It was missing?
Yes. Like how they have the pages for each line,
Hmm.
because it was the family cell phone bill. So it was the kids'
Yeah.
line.
So he hid it.
Yeah. So apparently
It's
he got
intriguing
home
as this
before
one.
I did. Right. He got home before I did. He went to the mailbox. The cell phone bill was there. That was when I was getting the paper, it was coming via paper. And so when I go to pay the cell phone bill, and I'm looking at like the charges, because sometimes the kids would like go over their data or whatever. His pages were missed. Plus, it was thinner. And
Hmm.
I thought, and then I looked and I said, okay, well, his phone is missing. And I said, well, why'd you pull your? Oh, no reason, no reason. And so I was just like, so I got suspicious.
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
So I set up an account online so I could see the whole bill.
Oh.
And then you could see the calls to the same number. Like we didn't have the detail, but it
Uh-huh.
was calls to the same number. Like when I would hear him on the phone in the middle of the night in the basement, like because there was a vent in our bedroom where I could hear him talking on the phone in the middle of the night. Well,
Did you
because
call the number?
no, I didn't have to. I looked it up online and found out who it belonged to.
Mm.
And I thought, okay.
Yeah.
So and she had come to visit, like, and I found, but I really found out concrete evidence because he forgot his cell phone.
Oh,
And I
no.
was cleaning up the clothes in the bathroom, and it was these messages from her. Like that was what, because she was messaging him,
Mm.
and that was when I confronted him.
Yeah. How'd that go?
Oh, that was when we went into marriage therapy, which I don't recommend.
No. Oh,
And we had a horrible marriage therapist. Like she was like, because he always led with, he was a mental health professional. So they always talked to him like he was a colleague,
oh,
as
you're
opposed
kidding.
to, but he said, well, the confidence game, that's a good book for chumps to read, because
Uh-huh.
because that and why does he do that? Like those were two of the first books I read.
Mm-hmm.
And it clarified so much for me. And like, because that whole setup is a confidence game. It's just like any con. And once you understand, and the one thing she recommends is not investing in the narrative, because that's how you get taken.
Yeah.
Like every con person leads with a narrative. And
So he
that's how,
had his narrative for that therapist.
well, he has a narrative for everything. So that's how you get pulled in.
Yeah.
Because like when I met him, like he didn't believe in material things, but well, because he couldn't afford a lot at the time because he was in debt.
Yeah.
He was very materialistic, and then he blamed me that I made him materialistic. Like it was
What's quite intriguing though is you said you had previous D-days and you suspect there were
But
things
I didn't.
going on
Well,
in the
I
past.
didn't know because I was explaining to Tracy that, um, you project who you are onto people, and I was not a cheater. Like, just it didn't occur to me like I didn't get married to date. If I wanted to date, I wouldn't have got married. So, um, when I look back on it, and he would be talking about like different women, like, more than other coworkers or whatever, I realized like there were probably so many other women, but I look back and then there were like prostitutes and,
Mhm.
things that I didn't know about. And so I recognized like this has been going on for a while. I don't know when it started.
Hmm.
I'm just glad I don't have to think about it anymore.
No, it was a long double life. There's like total deception. Wow.
And I don't think it necessarily started out that way, but I
Yeah.
think that there was a permission structure with him that this was all okay to be this way.
Mm.
He had some extensive phone bill hiding to do, really, didn't he? Given what he'd been up to.
But once I knew he stopped hiding it, and then it was the whole pick me dance thing. So that was 3 years before the final D-Day. So we stayed together for another 3 years, actually moved into a different house, and so I really should have left that first time. But we had kids in college, like your
Yeah.
fun, we've been married 25 years. Like by the time
Yeah.
the divorce was final, we had been by the time the divorce was final, it would have been our 28th anniversary.
Wow. How are those
And,
3 years for you? That must have been really
but
hard.
some of it was like good,
Mhm.
like what because like you start that whole cycle over. Like it's gonna be better, and like they're on their best behavior. It can't last though.
No.
It can't, because they've already decided that this is not the relationship they want to be in. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, they wouldn't have been doing this in the first place.
Yeah.
But once the kids got to a point where I think he felt like financially he was kind of free,
Hmm.
he was done, because he didn't need me for anything anymore. Like the kids, I take care of the kids, like they were doing well. So my job was done.
Yeah, I call this being the wife appliance. Like your services are no longer needed. You're an
So
obsolete
it's kind of like
appliance.
he's got a perfectly good car, but he wants a new car. Like,
Yeah,
and
you're a thing. You're a
right,
thing.
you're a thing. Like you serve a purpose. You don't recognize that because you think you're having a partnership.
Hmm.
I always saw him as a partner, and he saw me as an adversary.
Mm.
I think that was our relationship dynamic. Like he, from the time when we were dating, and we went to play miniature golf, and I beat him. And he couldn't fathom that, like, well, it's a game, like I just happened to beat you this time, like, but he was like floored that I had beat it. And I think from that moment on, I was an adversary, somebody that had to be
Well,
bested.
that's why he had to cheat, Darlene, because you're so good at putt-putt golf.
and, and
Is,
sometimes
is there is there any element of you at all that misses those crazy golf days though, that because obviously you were together for a long time,
Mhm.
that first time round where the marriage survived, you were there for another 3 years, you must have almost felt like sort of you'd won, you got him back.
Yeah,
Did
well, you know what? I felt a certain relief because it got me to keep my family intact and my kids like secure space maintained. Like, there was some place for the kids to come, when they came home from school. Because otherwise, what does that look like for them? Like this was more like, okay, like, because I had invested years of my life in this
Sure.
relationship.
Yeah, of course.
And to me, it was just kind of like I didn't even understand why he was cheating. Like, what is it that you need? Like, all you have to do is ask for it.
Yeah.
But then you get into that cycle where like they start to have you do demeaning things.
Yeah.
Like to test you to see how far they can push you. It's not worth it. It's time to get out,
Yeah.
because basically they're breaking you down.
Well, and those kids, they sided with you. So, you're trying to hold it together to give it to
And
them.
it wasn't, what, and I don't even feel like they sided with me because they never did not have a relationship with him.
Yeah, I'm not
But
saying that
yeah,
he's dead to them, but that he saw that your kids saw that this was hurting you. You raised them with good values. They knew that this wasn't right.
Yeah, well, you know, my
That's right.
youngest always says, I told you when I was little to divorce him. I said, you also told him to divorce me when you were mad at me. So
Oh,
she said, no, we wanted you two to get a divorce. So that they were actually, because then I became a better parent. And you know, one of his relatives said to me one time, she said, we could have been she said, I think we were good parents. She said, but I think we could have been better parents if we weren't dealing with that aspect of our relationship, because we would have had all of that energy that we were wasting,
yeah.
you know, trying to keep the marriage together and all that. We could have invested even more of that in our kids and our parenting, which
Well,
I think
that's
people
not on
don't
you.
take
That's
into.
on him because he was spending his energies elsewhere. You were raising kids and going to work. I mean, you brought
Yeah,
your
but you
A
know, but
game.
I look back on, like, I would have had a lot more patience, you
Mm,
know, because it saps a lot of your energy, which is why I tell people, just get out.
yeah.
Like, because they've already at that point decided this is the relationship they're having with you. It doesn't matter who the relationship they have with somebody else. This is the relationship they're having with you. And this is how they have learned to treat you. And they're not going to treat you any better, because you now have once you stay with them, you're creating a permission structure. Yeah, you can abuse me, you need to go. If they're
Yeah.
going to change, they need to change over there,
Yeah.
not with you.
I think that's such brilliant advice, and you just don't hear that. You kind of hear all this advice saying you need to change and win them back. And how I'm intrigued to know how his life, because you're obviously absolutely, you know, you're strong. You are absolutely confident in your decision. What about him? How's his life
Oh,
unfolding?
he married her,
Hmm.
because that was the whole purpose of getting a divorce, because she's a pastor,
He's
and
a
so
pastor? You have a
yeah,
sinister minister?
yeah.
Oh,
But nobody admits that she was the other woman, even though he sent me a picture of them. So everybody knows she's the other woman. But to this day, he tells people she was not the other woman, although everybody knows she was, because everybody was there.
oh no. Jesus cheated
Everybody
for the
was
best.
there.
Oh,
And so everybody just kind of like, sure, dude, whatever. Like, my oldest son just got married, which is why I was not
oh,
at Chumpalooza, because it was like a couple of weeks after my son's 3 weddings. He married an Indian girl, so there were 3 ceremonies, because her mother was Zoroastrian, her father's Hindu,
oh
you
my
know.
God.
So in one weekend, so
Wow.
it was beautiful, but it was a lot.
Oh,
And
well,
he's still telling that story that she was the other woman. And my kid, and you know, I had one line that I drew in the sand. I'm not coming to anything where she is. I can't avoid him because I unfortunately picked him. He's your parent. Like, and I make it easy for my kids. Like, I don't have any animosity towards it, because at this point I don't care. Like, who
yeah.
cares? Like, you're out here living, I'm out here living. I'm happier. Like, and I told him, like, I miss my BlackBerry more than I miss you. Like, really. Like, I want my BlackBerry
But
back.
what? So if you won't be anywhere where he is, what about
No,
weddings?
no, I won't be anything where
Where
place where
she
she
is.
is. And like
Oh,
I
is she,
told
so
him,
did she come to the wedding then, or did she want to
oh
come
no,
to the
she
wedding?
wasn't invited.
So
Hmm.
that's quite, because I think that's something that is really difficult when they want to, and I'm thinking about grandchildren as well, when they want to sort of step into that role, or to be part of that. Do you find that difficult with your grandchildren, knowing that they will have to have some sort of relationship with her?
They won't, because my daughter refuses to. Now I don't know about the rest of my kids, but my oldest daughter says she doesn't want somebody like that around her children.
Yeah.
So that will never happen, at least with my oldest 2 grandkids. And I let my kids navigate that. But you know, I tried to tell him, like, stop trying to force her on the kids.
Yeah.
Like, let them navigate that space on the. This was before the divorce was even final, because she was pushing herself at the kids. And I said, you know what? Let them navigate that on their own. If they're gonna have a relationship with her, let them figure that out. They're adults, like they can figure that out. Well, the more they were around her, the less they liked her. She's toxic. She's a very toxic person. So is he. So they're perfect for each other. I think that like he has found his person. And
They can
so
have it. Wow.
so they didn't like her because she's toxic. Like, and it was coming out of her. And so they decided on their own, like, no, like, and me saying, I just don't want to, like, you can go be with them, visit them, whatever, like, but I don't want to ever occupy a space with the two of them. Like, why should I? Like, I didn't have much say in anything else, but I get to say in who I am around.
Yeah,
I
that's your
think
boundary.
sometimes though, Tracy, and you must have experienced this, if people like Darlene, they draw the boundaries, which I think are perfectly fair and acceptable, but they get portrayed as being somebody that can't move on and can't have a joyful, happy skipping together, all having
Right.
having lovely family time together. You still get that, don't you? That you should just like move on and all joyfully skip through the daisies together.
Yeah. Well, and if you don't, you're a bitter bunny. But Darlene, you don't seem to be the sort of person that would care if anybody
No,
thinks you're bitter.
and people who think that, like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have to, I have to be around him because we have kids together and
Mhm.
things, will happen where we have to be in the same space. I bought this condo with my youngest daughter. When he comes to see her, those rare occasions, I'm so happy that they live in out of state.
Mhm.
So that it's not that often. I know I'm probably going to see him. Okay,
Mhm.
like that's her father, like I don't care. But
Yeah.
I don't have to see her.
Yeah.
And so my thing is like I get to choose. There's certain things I get to choose. And I told my kids, like, I don't have any feelings about that. And if I do, those are my feelings for me to deal with. You do what you need to do. Like this
Yeah.
is your father, your relationship with him is your relationship with him.
And this was like we were talking earlier. This was like 10 years ago. So I mean, I'm assuming that it's not as raw as it once was. I mean, you've got these strong boundaries, but I'm sure it must have been much more painful in the early days
Oh,
to
earlier, like when she was really forcing the issue,
yeah.
like it was some type of a competition. And I'm thinking,
Well, it's a pick me
okay,
dance. Yeah.
so it was just like what, and so I'm here we are 10 years later, like why are we still doing this? Like,
Yeah.
no, you have kids of your own. And because and I'm always looking at it from my perspective, and I know everybody's not me, but if I was dating a man just and he had kids, and for whatever the reason, they didn't like me, okay,
Yeah.
they don't have to. I
Yeah.
have kids of my own. Go be with your kids. Like I don't have to have a relationship. Those are your kids. You have to have a relationship with your kids. If one day they decide they like me, that's fine. If they don't, I don't care. Like
Well, but I think it
they
gets to
have
your
that
point
right.
about narrative. She wants the narrative that we're all one big happy family, and what she doesn't isn't so bad. And if you buy into it and you're friends with her, then that benefits her. And it's the
Oh no,
impression
that's never gonna
management.
happen. That's never
It's
my
never going to
sister.
happen.
That's never gonna happen. No, never. Like
I
never.
wanted to I wanted to ask you about a story. So we met a couple years ago, and you told me this story that has been imprinted on my brain ever since. And I get a lot of stories, like literally millions of stories. But you so you're gonna have to set this up for us. But this was like right. This is right. We were going through the divorce, or you
Yes,
were
I was a year into the divorce.
okay. I'm gonna let you tell the story. But this is, I think, one of the mightiest things ever. This is like your I don't give a shit moment anymore. No one can push me around. I've had it.
Well, I was because of you and all the people on the blog, and I do give you a lot of credit.
Oh,
You and my therapist, like you and my two really good friends, like and my sister-in-law, who unfortunately passed away,
oh,
really saved me. And and I was able to build on that, like that support. And by this time, I had learned how to give myself permission. If I didn't want to get out of bed, I didn't have to. Like, I was living by myself. I could do what I wanted. And it was actually feeling good to me. But I was not suffering fools gladly at this point. So anyway, I rented an apartment. I lived on the first floor. And it was Easter Sunday. I'll never forget it. And it was the first nice day. because I think Easter had come in April, and it was a beautiful day. It was like 80 degrees, so I had all the windows open. It was a nice, beautiful breeze, and I was scheduled to go over. And at the time, my oldest daughter was living across the street with my son-in-law, and I was supposed to go have Easter dinner with them. And so I was laying there, and I'd been watching television, because all the Jesus movies were on. And so I said, oh, well, let me just, it's about time for me to, go get ready, because I think I'm supposed to be over there about 3 o'clock or so. So as I'm getting up, I turned the channel, and the King of Kings was on. So I said, oh, and so I had put the light on in the bathroom, and I said, oh, I just want to watch the end of the King of Kings. It was towards the end. I said, oh, I love it. So I heard the blind. I had 2 bedrooms because I always had a space for if my kids came to visit. So I heard the blinds moving in the other room. And you're oblivious. So I looked at and I said, is the wind that high? But the blinds weren't moving in my room. And I thought, well, maybe it's the angle. So I didn't pay any attention to. So after the King of Kings went off, I had taken off my little nightgown because the bathroom was like directly across from my room. And as I'm going out into the little hallway to go into the bathroom, I noticed that the door to the second bedroom is closed. Well, I never closed that door. I'm thinking, why is that door closed? Did it blow closed? So I push it open, and there's this young man standing in the room with like a bin that had my youngest daughter's like little treasures that I had taken from the house. And he had already unplugged my computer. And I'm thinking, he's robbing me. He had come in through the window because it was on the first floor. And I thought, he's robbing me.
And you were buck naked here on the way to the shower.
I was buck naked. I'm old lady buck naked. and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got pepper spray on my keychain, but that's in the living room. If I leave this room right now, and this is all going through my mind in a split second.
Yeah.
He'll go out the window with my stuff. That's not gonna happen. If I stay here, I said, do I go put on clothes? Because he's not going out I don't have time to put on clothes. So I took a stand right there. I started fighting him over the beat because I thought, ain't no way I can go put on clothes. He's already seen me buck naked. I might as well fight it out to the finish. And so that was what happened. And so he eventually pushed me down with the beat because I wouldn't stop fighting him and screaming. What are you doing in my house?
Oh, man.
Why are you in my house? And he pushed me down. He used the bin to push me down and then ran out the front door.
Without that bin.
Without that bin, without my computer, because my whole thing was, I can't afford to buy another computer. Like all of these things are going through your mind at the same time. And I thought, no, we're fighting about this.
This guy must have been terrified. He had no idea what he was up against.
He was young. Okay. Like he was probably my son's age. And I found out on the news that on that Sunday, there had been a rash of robberies in the neighborhood. So it was probably a bunch of kids like robbing places. But he wasn't robbing me. And so, I closed the window. I called my daughter and said, I got to call the police. Like somebody just, came in and she was saying, Mama, you okay? Like everybody was hysterical, but me. Oh, and I thought like of the worst case scenario, he didn't get anything. I'm not really hurt. Like nothing. Like I was just kind of like, I gotta call the police, blah, blah, blah.
He could have been art. Like you were just.
Even if he was armed, both of his hands were full because he was holding this pistol. We're gonna fight. We can ready fight. Okay? Like, I am done.
That's it exactly. I love that you are in this mental space where like, I am not taking one more thing. Like no more shit sandwiches. Like
I just was like, my daughter was going to be upset because her little treasures were in that bin.
Aww.
And I thought my kids have already lost too much. And if somebody had told me that would have been my response, I would not have believed them. But I am my mother's daughter, apparently, because apparently at some point, some guy had when I was little, somebody had broken into like the back of where they were living then.
Mhm.
And my mother chased him down the hallway with a gun saying, "Halt!"
Oh, wow.
Well, and then later on to find out there were no bullets in the gun, but nevertheless,
I didn't know that.
and I realized at that moment, I must be my mother's daughter.
It strikes me there's a parallel here, though, a bit of an analogy in that the items in the bin were worth fighting for, but your ex wasn't. So
No.
fight for the stuff in the bin, but don't fight for the person that's carrying on with another. Because often that's the thing, isn't it? We must fight for our prized man, which you were brilliant. You just went, no, thank you very much. But you did fight for the stuff in the bin. You recognized what was worth fighting for.
Well, I came to the conclusion when I realized, because I had met this woman before, that it just dawned on me when I realized who he was choosing,
Mhm.
that then he was not worth having. Because if this is what you want, I don't want you.
Yeah.
Because I already know who she is. I already know the type of person that she is. And if this appeals to you, you were never the man for me.
Yeah. Good for
Because
you.
then I take that as an insult.
Yeah.
So at that moment, it just kind of clicked. And that, that had been the year prior. And so I was already in that headspace, like, I don't want any of this. And that no contact, I went completely no contact for 3
Mm.
months. Completely. Like not a word, not a mumbling word, like nothing. It's amazing, like just that short period, how you can clear your head because you start to evolve into that person. Like, I don't really care what they think about me. I don't really care how they feel about anything. Like, no, I have to focus on myself and my kids. And I told my kids at some point, like, okay, that prior life, that's a terrible warning. As my life going forward is going to be an example, because I also recognize I didn't know what was going to happen to I don't know what's going to happen to my kids down the line.
Mhm.
They have to know that they will be okay in a relationship, not in a relationship, that you can always be okay. You can navigate your life where you'll be okay and be happy and thrive. I had to be that example for my kids.
You are that example. Can you talk a little bit about, you are happily retired, and you were telling me
Oh
beforehand
my
that
God, it was the
when you when you went through divorce, you were worried that maybe you wouldn't be able to afford retirement. I mean, you really navigated some stormy waters to get to be to this place where you're sane and solvent and happy and on the
Well,
other
somebody
side.
had to be somebody. Well, I don't know about saying because we're all
I
right.
think, look, man, yeah.
But you know what? And I have enough money to pay my bills. Like I tell my kids, like I miss all that discretionary income I had when I was working because I was able to collect Social Security because you get to that point where you can collect it and it doesn't matter how much money you're earning. So I
Mm.
waited till then to collect my Social Security. Like the whole bit, like I was living high on the hog and I was so happy. And but I thought, but I worked until I felt my kids were financially stable because I didn't want to have to worry about them.
Yeah.
And I pay it, it allowed me an opportunity to like pay off any bills I had. Like this was a whole process, like, because like everybody else, you come out, you're in debt, like you got my savings, like my 401k was depleted because I spent it all on the divorce, which dragged on for almost 3 years.
Oh, no.
So like I was basically starting from scratch and I was 60 years old.
Mm.
So, that is like, okay, I don't like this. But because I was awarded a portion of his pension, and that does not impact my Social Security, I realized if I get myself in a certain financial space and
Mhm.
get my kids where they're in a certain financial space, then I know I can retire. And so the future did not look as bleak as I thought when I first started. But like this was a whole process. And I think when you're first starting out, and this is the advice I would give to anybody, like it all looks like just dark tunnel.
Yeah.
No, even if you can't see the light, it's there. You just have to keep moving toward
Yeah.
it. And then the light will appear. Because you don't know what's going to happen, but You can control what you do. And it's just one step at a time. Just when you don't feel like getting out of bed, don't get out of bed. If you don't feel like taking a shower one day, give yourself permission to not take a shower that day. Just wallow in whatever you got to wallow in, but the next day get up
Yeah.
and take a shower. Like you have to give yourself space to not be okay in order to be okay.
That is a beautiful way to put it. I I was wondering all this great advice you give, if you could weigh in on a little segment that we call Fuckwit of the Week.
They're shameless, unreliable, and gobsmackingly entitled. It's Fuckwit of the Week.
The day that I found out my husband was having an affair, he had told me he was going to watch a pool tournament. Meanwhile, I was at home taking care of his elderly mother, who weighed about 200 pounds, and helping her off the toilet, only to find out later that he had been with another woman while I was doing all of this. So, yeah, I'd say that's pretty bad.
Oh, that's a fuckwit.
It's just almost staggering, isn't it? That she's looking after his mother.
Yes. Not her mother, his mother.
Yeah, his mother. That's the thing, you know. His mother, and he's. It's just astonishing that anybody would have such barefaced cheek, but then they do.
That's why we have a podcast, because these people are out there. What I was thinking, you know, we talk about being an appliance. It's like, yeah, he's fine for her to be of use in any way, and to me, it's like it's the value disconnect. I mean, she's clearly a caring, loving person. It's like what Darlene was saying about, like, you come to this marriage as a partner, and she's a partner, and a member of her family, her mother-in-law, needs help, and so she gives that help, and because that's who she is, and who he is someone who's out there cheating on her. I mean, it just shows you're just not the same people.
She's taking his mother to the toilet, sorting his, you know, all the very personal things out for his mother. And he's meanwhile getting very personal things sorted out for himself elsewhere that involves probably massaging his ego as well. I mean, you just hear these stories.
And I can almost guarantee you he will blame her for not being available to him because she was taking care of his mother. So he had to find joy elsewhere.
Oh, God, you're right.
That's what happens. Everything gets turned around on you. Well, if you hadn't been spending so much time taking care of my mother, maybe I wouldn't have cheated on you.
Oh, my God.
Because that's usually a narrative that comes up. If I was told you spend too much time taking care of the kids, well, who else is supposed to take care of?
I know you guys are both a mother of 4 children, right? I guess you were just very, very busy and couldn't be top-notch appliances.
I was the one on the school board. I was the one on the PTO. I was the one going to all the band trips. I was the one. Yeah.
It's a theme, isn't it? And the more you hear these stories, the more your wise advice kind of, you think, you know, absolutely, you take back control from this. You don't try and fight for people who have got such shockingly low values.
Yeah. What I would tell Kendra is that, you know, you leave this guy and then he can take his own mom to the bathroom. That can be his job, you know?
Well, you know what? But this is also what I have found. And it seems horrible, but like my grandmother told me a long time ago, whatever you put out there is what you're going to get back. And it's a horrible thing to have somebody treat you that way. And like, but when you get removed from it, you recognize, like, that's his choice. I'm doing what I know is the right thing. Yeah. I'm taking care of this woman. I don't know what her relationship is with this woman, but obviously she cares about this woman. And for her to even do that level of sacrifice, like she has no feelings for this woman, because that's not an easy job.
No.
And she's not getting paid for it, obviously. And on the other hand, she's being cheated on. But she's putting out all of that energy into the universe. That's what she's going to draw back. And she may not even realize it right away. And because I've experienced it myself, I can tell you, like, you never don't get back what you put out. And a lot of times it's better than how you put it out there. And what he doesn't recognize is that one day he's going to be old.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be anybody to take him to the bathroom because he didn't take his own mother to the bathroom. So he's living high on the hog now and enjoying himself. But every negative thing he's putting out there is coming back to him one way or another. You
I
find
think Schmoopy's going to do it.
and what comes back to you reflects what you put out there. It always does.
I want to believe
Karma,
that.
really, there is such a thing as karma. Then it's your rubbish life skills eventually catch up with you.
Well, you know, simply because the choices you make determine the life that you have. And people make and I'm not saying that good people don't have bad things happen to them. That's not what I'm saying. Like, I'm not like that type of person. But your life, what the choices that you make do eventually catch up to you. And because that is what your life looks like, the longer you live. And at the end of your life, what you're drawing in is every step you took to get where you are.
Yeah.
And so he's going to alienate all kinds of people, because if this is how he is with his own mother, how is he with other people? It's not just limited to this is his mother.
Yeah.
So how much energy is he really putting into other people? She's putting this energy into his mother. That's her energy that she is and she's also putting that into other relationships. That's how she is in her other relationships. And that's how I judge people. I'm watching how they treat the people as closest to them. I'm watching how they interact with all kind of people. And if you're not good and invested in the people that are closest to you, I don't want anything to really do with you. Like, we can have some type of casual relationship, but we can never be close.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the skills required to be good in a relationship. His mother?
His mother.
If I was the other woman, I wouldn't want a man who treated his mother like that. Like, why are you leaving? What kind of woman is she that's okay with her?
Well, that's the question for the ages. What kind of woman is okay with it? I would think, look, lady, you're up next. Guess who gets to take, mama to the bathroom? I mean, that's who's going to get that job, the next appliance in line, and it's not going to be him. And
his relationship with his mother is informing his relationship with all women. This is how he treats it. So she needs to get away from him, because if she ever gets sick, he's not going to take her to the bathroom either.
No.
I mean, just for merely selfish reasons. If he's going to take care of his own mother, you think if you get sick, he's going to take care of you? Baby, get away. Run. Run.
So that's your advice for anyone going through this. Run away.
Yeah, well, because he's showing you.
He's showing you. Well, that's right. I'm just going to hand the blog over to you, Darlene. I'm just here are the reins.
I'm old. I've seen it. Like, this is his mother, his primary source woman relationship. If he's not taking her to the bathroom, he's not taking you to the bathroom either.
Well, maybe that's if you're dating. Look at how he treats his parents. Maybe that's your first clue to his character.
It's always a clue. It's always a clue. Just watch how they navigate any relationship. Like, and if your man or woman doesn't have any really close friends, you need to be careful.
Yeah, that's usually a sign.
Or if their close friends are toxic, no, they're toxic too. They like that.
Do you have any plans for the holidays? You have any advice for anybody going through their first
kids will be
holiday?
Here. I'm all decorate. My kids say, like this condo looks like it threw up Christmas. So yeah, they know this is my season. My grandkids said, "Oh, Grammy, every time we come here, you've upgraded."
You have more Christmas things to do.
And my son in DC already made his arrangements to fly here. So yes, everybody will be here. Now, my son who just got married, like, he has to split his time, but we'll see him, I'm sure, because his brother will be here. Yeah, so I love the holidays.
Do you have any advice for someone going through it for the first time who had a D-Day who's going through the holidays? Any advice how to get through it?
Well, it depends. If you have friends, like say if you have young kids and they're spending that some time with their other parent, make your own holiday. Do something with your friends. Volunteer. That because when I came out of my marriage, one of the first things I did, like when I moved out of my house, one of the first things I did was volunteer.
Where'd you
Because
volunteer?
at the Ronald McDonald House that was near me, I could walk to it.
Okay.
And I did that for a couple of years, I think, until like they kind of changed over people who were in charge, and it got a little bit messier. But anything that will take you out of yourself and your problems, because and plus then you're around other people who are invested in the same thing you're invested in. I always say sign up to do something, volunteer, whatever.
Yeah.
If you especially if you have little kids and you don't have your kids and it's your first time without them, go out and be with other people.
Yeah.
If you are an introvert, and I discovered during COVID I was actually an introvert, which is why I don't really need to be out all the time. Sometimes you can just stay home and create a scene that you like under a fuzzy blanket with a cup of tea and watching Christmas movies. Like those are like mental health days from work sometimes. Like, don't look at it like you're missing out on something. Your kids are going to be your kids forever.
Yeah.
And you're missing this moment. But there's so many more moments to come. Don't focus in on what you're missing. Focus in on all the things that are coming.
I
Like,
love it. Yeah.
center your attention on like all the possible, start making plans for like, okay, when I have my day, we're going to do this. Or when they get back, we're going to go ice skating. Like just plan things like, okay, like they're with him now, but when they get back here, we're going to do this.
Get more Christmas ornaments so that your condo looks like Christmas exploded in it. That's
Oh
like...
my
Well, on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, Darlene. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. And I hope I helped somebody because you guys really helped me.
That wraps another episode of Tell Me How You're Mighty. You want to leave us a mighty story or a fuckwit of the week submission? Check out our new website, tellmehowyourmighty.com. That's yours spelled YOURE. We've got all the episodes, show notes, links to our guests, and you can see the tea room where Sarah and I first met. If you enjoyed this episode, please review the podcast and follow us. Thanks. See you next week.